Hi everyone. It's been a really long time since I posted a video, and I know that I posted my dad's memorial video last week, and so that should give you some clue as to why I've been taking such a large break from these videos. That and the fact that my toddler has gotten quite a bit more difficult to deal with at night, and I also am not able to stay up as late as I had been and still be functional at work. So I've had to, bring my bedtime down to 10:30 instead of 11:30, and that leaves me an hour less every night to work on these fun projects. So anyways, this video is a bit different. For last Father's Day, my wife got me a helicopter intro flight, which is something that I had talked about in the last year that I had never ridden in a helicopter, and I was curious what that might be like. So a fellow club member at the Oregon State Flying Club is also a helicopter pilot, and he's a really nice and approachable guy, so I had always been interested in having him give me some instruction because, I think he'd be a really good instructor. So she set up a time with him, and I set the GoPro up and recorded some video. So this is just going to be my literally first and perhaps only helicopter lesson for quite some time. But just the same, if you're curious what an intro helicopter lesson might be, keep watching. One thing that was really interesting about the Robinsons were once you started the engine, you had to not only sit and wait for the clutch that engages the rotor system from the engine to finish traveling, you also had to wait for the cylinder head temperatures to come up before going up to full power. So I had always wondered, as a aircraft or a fixed wing pilot, seeing the helicopters just sort of sit there spinning their rotors, and I thought, well, that doesn't seem, very efficient. Why aren't they just going? And you don't worry about that too much on a plane. You sort of start up the engine and then start taxiing. And by the time you've taxied to the runway, you're warm. But, I guess in a helicopter, when you're hovering, you're using a lot of power. So you really need to give the engine time to come up to temperature for the seals, the longevity of everything. And so we ended up having to sit around for a while waiting for these things to sort of engage. So this is the first really cool part, when Matt lifts us off the ground and we hover taxi around to taxiway Alpha, and then just take off on the taxiway, because screw it, who needs runways? Just there you could hear the blade stall warning horn, and on the Robinsons in particular, they're so underpowered in a way that it's easier to stall the rotor blades where, you're giving it more collective, you want to give it more up, but the engine is already at its maximum power output. And so just like a plane, when you ask for more lift out of a wing, you increase the drag, which lowers the engine RPM even more because it's already fully taxed, and then you're asking for yet more lift, and that causes the engine to lower an RPM again, and it's this very bad cycle. So what the Robinsons have is they have a blade stall warning horn, and that's what you just heard Matt test. That whole time Matt had been flying, and now he just asked me to put my feet on the yaw pedals or tail rotor pedals and give them a little wiggle to see how they work. And then also these little turns to the right and to the left, he's having me try to keep the helicopter coordinated relative to the bank and the turns that he's making. At this point, Matt hands me the cyclic, which controls, front and back and left and right, and it's really super sensitive. So it takes me the first 30 seconds or a minute just to stop oscillating, never mind controlling it accurately. And the first 2 orbits around the little gravel beach that we end up landing on, I'm controlling it that whole time, and then Matt takes over when we start descending to land. You can tell I'm very timid, wanting to not really bank this thing very far. And then the blade started making that slapping noise, and I have no clue what that is from. So for some reason I was really shy about it, and every time it started slapping I wanted to back off the turn. And Matt was telling me, tighten the turn up, but then it would start slapping, and I just had this natural instinct to slack it off a bit. You can definitely tell when Matt took over and we had that awesome bank and then this totally killer landing. finally Matt gives me all three controls, so the pedals, the collective, and the cyclic, to fly us back to the airport. And I'm going to speed this whole part up, but at the end Matt kind of takes over the landing, even though we don't really touch down on the runway. It's funny to me that I end up flying so far to the right of centerline. I don't know why. It seems like a helicopter would be easier to just scoot over, but I was completely task saturated, and I was just happy that I was pointed kinda sorta in the vicinity of the airport. And another thing that was difficult as a fixed wing pilot to get my head around was trying to keep the nose up on final to slow down. In a fixed wing plane, you keep the nose down on final because you're descending, and that's the only, well, it's not the only way, but that's the most sensible way to descend, is to keep the nose down on final. So it was definitely a disconnect, and all of my instincts were telling me nose down, nose down, nose down, and Matt was telling me nose up, nose up, nose up. One of the last things that we did was do a little hover practice. So Matt slowed us down above the intersection of runway 927 and taxiway Charlie, and he had me try out some hovers. So I'm going to do the hovers in higher speed to give you an idea more easily seen of how bad I am, especially the first one. The second one, he said I did all right, but it's surprisingly difficult to hover these things. And then finally, we taxied back over to the parking area, and he had me do almost all of that taxiing, the hover taxiing, which was a lot of fun. That was cool to do. And at the end there, he takes over to finish up and leave the hover and swing the tail around because they were pulling a jet out of the hangar. Well, that's it. It was tons of fun, and I want to say thank you to my lovely wife for the great Father's Day present. It really was a blast, and thanks to Matt for the lesson. So if you are interested in helicopter instructions, go find an instructor, and if you're in the Willamette Valley, give Matt a call. Thanks for watching.